What is up, everyone, and welcome to the Manuscript Podcast. This is the podcast where we believe 21st century man controls his destiny, that his choices define his future, and that he writes the script to his own life. I am your host and fellow man, Ruben Stamper, and as always, it's a freaking honor to have you here with me. Thank you so much for joining me. All right, so in today's episode, we're going to jump right into things. We're talking all about binary thinking and why it'll screw up your life if you stick to it forever. Let's go. Okay, everyone. So today we're going to be talking all about the two-choice paradox and why we get stuck in it so often and why we need to learn as men to get out of it. So I've said it a million times before, but this podcast is focused around making men happy, helping men, myself included, to live the happiest, richest, fullest lives we possibly can. And one part of living a wholesome and a good life is making good choices. I think that's pretty cut and dry. I mean, we all would agree on that, right? You know, if you're making terrible choices with your life and you're making terrible decisions, well, then you're not going to live the happiest life you could be, because alternative to bad decisions are good decisions, and you would prefer to make as many good decisions as possible. So on this topic of the two-choice paradox, first off, let me explain what it is. This binary way of thinking is basically you have two options and two options alone. You can only choose A or B. There is no C, D, E, F, or G, okay? It is just two choices. And we do this so often to ourselves where we trap ourselves into thinking, oh, there is only one option that I can choose here out of two, okay? And it's, first off, an incredibly limiting way to live your life, because you find yourself caught in between a rock and a hard place, because a lot of times it seems like you give up so much if you take choice B because you wanted something from some choice A, or you wanted something from choice B, and by choosing choice A you have to give that thing up. And so often that is just not the case. There are better options, but it's kind of human nature, I think, to just go to the two extremes, right? And so one of the problems with it is that it gives you a very limited perspective on your life. Because, you get caught in between these two different ideas that you think are the end-all, be-all. You have to make a choice between two very hard, cut and dry things, black or white. And the truth is, a lot of times, there's options out there in the gray that you can choose, okay? And so, there's a problem with just having two options in your life, because you're always going to make one extreme decision. And sometimes it's good to make a non-extreme decision and actually do something that is more, tempered and more within the mean and not on the extremes. So that's one problem, is that it gives you a limited perspective, basically, because you're not looking at the other choices. You're stuck with just those two. So you got to get out of this binary way of thinking. And so another problem is that it reduces things to very simplistic choices. Whereas, life is complex, right? It takes thinking about things. It takes deliberation and consideration to actually make the right decisions. And often, we come up with two ideas because we've got finite brains. We can't come up with every idea out there. And so we come up with our first two ideas, right? So I have to do X or I have to do Y. And then we just stop there, We don't go back to say, oh, wow, there's actually a choice A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. We don't do that. And that's actually to our detriment. It does not help us whatsoever. So an example I thought of that would maybe put this more into visceral terms. Here we go. Here is an example of a false dichotomy. I either spend $65,000 on a brand new Toyota Tacoma, or I must drive a $2,000 Lemon forever. Right? And within those two choices, there's a lot going on. Right? So on the one hand, you're like, okay, the more money I spend on a car or a vehicle, the longer it's going to last, the more reliable it will be, the nicer it will be. Alternatively, if I don't want to spend that amount of money, then I have to drive a shitty car the rest of my life. And it's going to break down every 2 months. And, you get caught in between these two choices when, it's very easy to do that, but you don't have to. You don't have to. You can step back for a second and look at all your choices and say, oh, maybe I don't want to have a crazy car payment. I don't want to spend $65,000 on this brand new truck. And I would like to also have a vehicle that is reliable. It's like, okay, well, what's in there in the middle, right? What could I spend $25,000 on? What could I spend $10,000 on, depending on what your budget is? Like, whatever it is, what can I find that would do the job for me and fit the criteria that I'm looking for? Now, you do have to sacrifice some things, right? Because, sure, you're not going to get a $2,000 car, most likely, that's going to run forever and not break down all the time, okay? For $2,000, that's probably not a realistic option. And for a cheaper car, you're not going to get the luxury features of a brand new Toyota Tacoma, you know? But you should not limit yourself to those two choices. Another thing that pops up all the time people talk about is this idea of, I have to work a stable job that I hate, or maybe I'll get lucky and I'll get to have my dream career. And once again, those are just two very simplistic and kind of naive ways to look at things. It's like, oh, I have to hate my life every day that I go into work just so I can pay the bills, or I get lucky and I get to become one of these YouTube influencers, or, like you look at these different jobs that everybody seems to want, right? It's maybe I get to become an astronaut. Like, no, man, you can do both. What? You can do both? Are you kidding me, Ruben? That's crazy. No, it's not crazy. It's called that, you have to temper your expectations. It's not going to happen all at once, but you can work on both at the same time. You can say, my family needs an income. We need to be able to support ourselves financially. And so, yes, I'm going to potentially stick it out with this job that, it's a full-time job and it pays the bills, and it's not my favorite thing in the world, and I wouldn't advocate you choose something that you absolutely hate, like if you hate sales, don't go into sales, but, you can find something that would support your family. And then on the side, with extra time, yes, you can do this. It would take sacrifice from some family time and other things, time with your wife, etc. But on the side, start slowly ramping up what could be your dream career. And there's no guarantee that it will happen, but you can do both these things at the same time and feel like you're making progress. And you don't have to be stuck in one or the other. There's oftentimes just so many more choices than we give ourselves credit for. We think, okay, our first two ideas in our head, which represent the two extremes, those must be the only choices out there. And it's simply not true. And then the last thing I want to talk about with this idea of like binary thinking is it's very, very helpful when it comes to conflict resolution. I haven't been married very long. I would never say that I am in any way an expert on marriage. But my wife and I, we talk a lot, and sometimes we have disagreements. And 99% of the time, what happens with our conversations is that we end up having to figure out that there are more choices than just two, right? She has her idea, I have my idea, and we both think, oh, well, to choose the other is like going to completely ruin my idea, and there's a back and forth, and we talk it out, and eventually what happens is we're like, oh, damn, there really is a choice C, D, E, F, and G, and we made it so simple because it made sense right in the beginning when we started the conversation, but in reality, there's so many different routes we could take, and in doing that, we both really 99% of the time get what we want, and it's awesome. And so it's very helpful for conflict resolution because even at work, if somebody has a differing view on how they want to run a business or how they want to handle a certain part of a business, and you have a different idea, most of the time, you don't have to choose one or the other. There is a way to compromise, and not thinking in just terms of, two choices is very helpful on that front. So, okay, now that we've talked about some of the reasons that I think it's terrible for a man, if he's trying to live a happy life, to have this binary way of thinking, let's talk about how you fix it, because I like to give actionable actions. So, how do you fix it? Really, it's pretty simple, as most of the fixes are here. Simple but difficult. This is the way I think that most of life goes. The antidote is very, very simple, but the actual, administering of it is very difficult. So the simple way that you fix this is the next time that you feel yourself getting dismayed because you feel like you only have two shitty options ahead of you, take a step back. Take a step back and start really looking at the gray areas in between those two things. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to find that there are multiple different avenues you could choose to go down that would give you results from both ends of the spectrum that you desire. You don't have to go with shitty choice A or shitty choice B, or good choice A and good choice B. You can meld those things together and a lot of times create a better result for your life and for the life of your family. And so, anyways, that's it. Take a step back. So many of the principles I've been talking about in this podcast just require soundness of mind and introspection, and taking a step back and taking a deep breath and saying, okay, let's assess this situation better, because my first initial reaction is not normally my best reaction. Take a deep breath, look at the facts, look at the different options, and then you're going to be a lot freer, because you're not going to feel bound to simply two different ways of thinking. Well, anyways, that's all I have to say on binary thinking. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it brings some clarity to your life. I know this is something I definitely have to work on. I'm not perfect at this. But it is something I have been constantly working on, and I do feel like I am becoming rather adept at just, the first two thoughts, right? You look at those, and you're like, oh, this is one extreme, this is the other. I think I'm getting slightly better at stepping back and saying, oh, okay, there are multiple options here. I just need to open my eyes, and you start opening different doors, peeking past them. Open the window, look outside, see what you can do, because most times there's a lot of options in front of you, and they are options that will lead you to a happier end result. So that's all I have to say. Let's move on to section 2 of the Manuscript Podcast. Hey guys, if you're interested in all the stuff I've been talking about throughout this podcast, and you want to get a deeper dive and learn about these principles and these virtues I've been talking about within the podcast, go check out my book, Modern Misery. It's by me, Ruben Stamper. It's on Amazon. I will put a link in the description below. If you're interested, go give it a purchase. I think you'd really enjoy it, and I would appreciate it. So anyways, back to the podcast. Just thought I'd share. All right, everyone, the second part of the Manuscript Podcast is upon us. So, according to Nicole Lee of the website nogood.io, results from a recent consumer survey by Piper Sandler reported that, with the exception of TikTok, Gen Z consumers are the only generation that reported declining use of social media platforms in recent years. Data from the Pew Research Center corroborates this finding by reporting that users between 18 and 25 years old are the only age group to see a decrease in social media use since 2019. These insights may seem surprising, given that Gen Z grew up amongst the ubiquity of social media, but it is exactly this familiarity that gives rise to their dissatisfactions. It's human nature to reject change amidst comfortable familiarity. Now, to contrast this, according to Josh Howarth of ExplodingTopics.com, 1 in 4 Gen Zers spend over 5 hours a day scrolling TikTok. So both these findings are interesting to me, and I thought they were worth discussing. At potentially from the perspective of a man in the 21st century, what does this mean? What is it showing us? I think it's showing us that there are dividing groups within Gen Z. Everybody talks about Gen Z being like terrible in the workforce and having terrible work ethics. And what it seems to me is that, like all generations, there are good apples and bad apples, right? And what these two studies and stats show me is, this is how I interpret it, is that there are people who are very sucked in by social media, and there are also people within Gen Z who are looking at people who are very sucked in by social media and saying, I don't really want that. I would actually much prefer a genuine relationship with someone, a genuine connection with the people around me in my community. And I think that's awesome. I actually think that's the start of something potentially really great, this anti-social media movement. I'm not a big fan of social media. I think that many of the stats and studies that have come out in recent years have shown that it is incredibly detrimental, especially to young women. And so I'm not a huge fan of social media to begin with. I understand that as a business, maybe that's something you have to do. I get that. But at the same time, is it good for humans? Is it a net positive? Is it actually making us grow closer to our communities and to the people that love us? I don't think so. Now I know I sound like a grumpy old man, and I deleted my social media accounts a while ago because I didn't want them in my life. I'm getting married. I've also, and I think that there's a lot of studies that back this up, but I think that in many ways, social media, especially if you're in a relationship, is like a cheating machine. Like it corroborates a lot of infidelity. I think it leads to a lot of that for a lot of people. And don't get me wrong, I got a strong enough will to where that wouldn't be a problem. But I do think that just in general, it's meant to target those facets of what a human is. Like especially human sexuality. It's like, oh, okay, we're gonna just show you pictures of all of these half-naked women, and this is what social media is. And it's like, I don't know, man. I just didn't want that in my life, and I think I'm much happier for having deleted social media out of my life. But that is a tangent about me, and I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about this study. So I think that is the blossoming, potentially, of something really exciting and really good, is that there is a subset of Gen Z that is looking at how everyone else is living their life and saying, man, why everyone's so unhappy? We're so depressed. We've got all these terrible thoughts about ourselves. Like what's going on here? And one of the common denominators with Gen Z is that they grew up with social media. It's like, why are all my peers like suicidal? Why are they all having these mental health issues? Why is everyone so down in the dumps? I don't want to be like that. And it's like, then you look at people who are older, and it's like they've got good communities around them, and their standard of happiness is relatively high. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it's relatively high. And you look around, and you say, well, I have to choose between hardcore depression and just being constantly miserable in my life, or having some semblance of a community around me that loves me, that cherishes my existence. Yeah, I'm going to go with the second. I'm going to work hard to foster that. I'm going to make that happen. I think that's pretty cool. I think that's exciting. And this is one of the few stats that I've read that I was like, oh my gosh, that's actually pretty cool. Now, obviously, the 1 in 4 Gen Z are spending over 4 or 5 hours a day scrolling TikTok. That's not good. That's a waste of your time. Obviously, I think anybody with an objective lens could look at that and say, oh my gosh, 5 hours a day scrolling TikTok? Like, what do you actually remember from those 5 hours? What practical piece of knowledge have you used? Maybe you have. It's possible. Maybe there's a video or two that showed you some tip on how to live life better. Potentially. But most of the time, I think it's just stupid people doing stupid things. And that doesn't really benefit anyone. It actually wastes your time. And then you don't even remember what the stupid person was doing. So it's TikTok, not for me. But that's a whole different thing. I just wanted to bring this to your attention. Let me know what you think in the comments below, like what is going on. Obviously, I'm posting these videos on YouTube. I think YouTube is maybe the most valuable tech platform out there, because in many ways it allows for long form videos that do help people. I'm hoping that these podcast episodes are helping people. I have this on Spotify as well, but I personally have fixed tons of things through YouTube, like watching videos. It's amazing, like with cars, if you're trying to fix something, there's some amazing hillbilly out there, dude, who just knows cars so well and knows exactly what you're trying to fix, and is like, oh, I need to fix, how do I replace the taillight on a 2006 Honda CR-V? Look it up, and there's that guy doing that. So I'm a fan of YouTube and what it brings to the market. Obviously, it's not all good. There's a lot of wasted time and on YouTube, but the point is, Gen Zers, a lot of them are actually leaving social media platforms and saying, I am going to embrace real life instead. That's crazy to think about. But anyways, that's the second part of the Manuscript Podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, leave your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear what you have to think about this. And yeah, we're moving on to section 3 of the Manuscript Podcast. We're talking about controlled craziness. It's going to be good. Let's go. All right, men. Are you tired? Tired of living a mundane existence? Tired of being a couch potato? Tired of feeling like a deadbeat? Well, that is what this segment of the Manuscript Podcast is all about, because today we are talking about rewilding your life and why, as men, we have just stopped doing this. It used to be, you hear stories of people in the past. It used to be that people would introduce a bit of controlled chaos into their lives in order to get their blood pumping and to remind them that they really are alive. Now, as a culture, I think we've become such a consumerist group of people that we're constantly consuming things, consuming, and we're never going out and doing the thing. I love the John Wick movies, man. They're great. They're awesome. Super fun to watch, for sure. I love action movies, like Die Hard is one of my all-time favorite movies. And I'm not suggesting you go out there and start killing people. That is not what I am suggesting. What I am suggesting is go do something crazy. Not controlled. Don't go get yourself killed. Don't go rock climbing without a harness on, but maybe go rock climbing. Maybe that exhilaration will get your blood pumping again. Will get a little bit of fire back in your eyes. Will bring the exhilaration to your life. Because I think life can get very hum-ho. We can get very trapped in our own little trench, and we never jump out. We never try and see what's to the left or right of us. We just keep plodding ahead, doing the same thing every damn day. And I think that is a recipe for a miserable existence. You got to plan things out. You got to make time to do something that is a little chaotic, a little crazy, a little wild, a little dangerous. But you got to do that. Because otherwise, you feel like a slug. You feel like Jabba the Hutt just, sliming around your day. That is your life. So, here's a couple ideas for you. Go hike a mountain. Join an MMA club. Go join an improv group because it makes you uncomfortable. And you get a little jittery, a little butterflies in your throat before you get up in front of everyone. Wrestle your brother. Rock climb. Go hunting. Kill an animal. I'm a big hunter, love hunting, and it brings an exhilaration to your life. There's a very deep respect for the animal. There's something very primal about that action of taking the life of an animal. And I'm very respectful of the animal after I've killed it. Very grateful for the life that it's given you. But there's something exhilarating about that, man. You hear that thing coming through the woods, and you recognize the import of what you're about to do. And you take a step back and you're like, wow, this is intense. And your heart starts to beat really fast. And then when you finally do take the shot, you can just hear your heartbeat in your ears, like dum 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 dum, because your blood is finally pumping and you feel alive. You feel like you've done something a little crazy. Start racing your friends, man. There's a good one. If you're a competitive son of a gun, dude, do something competitive. That'll get your blood pumping. That'll get you fired up. Go schedule a pickup football game, okay? And talk shit to all your buddies, man. Talk so much shit. Get them riled up. Get them fired up, just pissed off at you so that they play a little rougher. Because sometimes that's good, man. Sometimes that's good to have a little bit of crazy in your life because there's all kinds of craziness in the world. Shit that we can't control. And my personal opinion is you can't worry about that stuff too much because it bogs you down, and eventually, once again, you can't do anything about it. But what you can do is do something a little crazy, a little out there, a little wild, the kind of stuff that when you bring it up in conversation, people are like, holy shit, dude, what did you do? That's wild, and it makes for a great conversation, but it also makes you an interesting person. It builds your character because if you're doing the same thing every single day, every single weekend, every single month of your life, man, you can just feel like you haven't done anything fun, anything memorable. I think in my life I'm starting to cherish much more the moments that create memories for myself. And I've recognized that almost all those times, have been going out and doing something a little wild, and sometimes it's not even that wild. I went fishing with my dad a couple of years back. He took me on a small fishing trip, and that was a memory that will stay with me forever. But we had amazing conversations about very deep topics on that trip. And like that's a memory that I will remember forever. But a lot of other memories, man, that I love. I used to play airsoft with my cousins all the time. I loved doing that. It was exhilarating. I would pretend like I was James Bond, and I'd go out there and just freaking I would have been a terrible James Bond because I would have been dead like in an instant. But like I'd just bull charge people, man. Like I wouldn't care if they were shooting at me. And most of the time they'd get scared and start running away. And then when they run away, that's like the perfect time to shoot them, man. Because like they back down. If they would have stayed just calm for a second, they could have shot me for sure. But just like bull rushing, during like airsoft, you could just kind of bring this controlled wild back into your life. Because we live in a world where there's not tons of challenges that are forced upon us. It used to be you walk out of your cave and like there would be a lion out there and, that would be intense. And if you won that battle, you'd be like a legend back at your town. That doesn't happen anymore, man. We don't have tons of wars going on all the time that, unless you're actively enlisted in the military, you're not going to be going overseas and doing that. And that's not necessarily a good thing. I'm not saying that war is a good thing. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But I am saying that some of the things that historically in the past men had to deal with, we don't really have to deal with much anymore. And so I think it falls on us to do shit that's crazy, that's wild, that makes us interesting. So that's basically the whole Ruben Rant segment. Put down your TikTok, get off your TV, stop idolizing these action heroes, and go do some damn action, man. Go do something wild. And get a couple of your buddies, bring them along with you, go on a 10-mile hike, go do something wild. And while you're on the hike, man, climb some rocks, throw some shit at some things. Just have fun. For a second, step back out of your everyday shirt and collar tie or your hard hat day and go have some fun. Act like a kid again for a little while, okay? I think that it really does bring a lot of joy to your life, and it makes for a lot of fun memories. So, anyways, that's my Ruben Rant segment. If you find yourself living a Jabba the Hutt-esque life, change it. Make your life better. All right, that's all I have to say in this section of the Manuscript Podcast. I hope you enjoyed. All right, everyone, hopefully I have inspired you to go skydive or do some crazy shit with your life, or I have helped you in some way to understand that there are multiple choices in almost every situation, and you don't have to think just two ways. And maybe I've spurred some inkling of a thought about what is the right amount of social media use, and is social media good for us as a culture? Hopefully, that is what has happened throughout this episode of the Manuscript Podcast. But alas, it is time for this podcast episode to end. So we're going to be closing the computer, and I'm going to be saying my final words, which are, remember, there's a better life out there. Let's get after it. Peace, my guys.